Hello again, this is Earth Skills with Jeff Gottlieb. We have a kind of a wide-reaching subject today that's actually, I would say, kind of on the lighter side. We're just coming up on the beginning of winter. It's the last few days in November, and it is really cold. And I was just thinking about, well, what's going on at this time of year? And what does that mean to us, and what can we do about it, and what kinds of advantages or opportunities are there at this time of year, and what kinds of things do we have to protect ourselves from at this time of year? And they fit all of the criteria that I usually talk about. You know, things that are going on in nature, things that are going on in our own bodies, things that are going on our homesteads. You know, the places we're trying to grow things and do things for ourselves, and also the aspects of primitive skills, primitive living, foraging, things like that, kind of our interface with the past. And this time of year, it's both busy and quiet at the same time. What's going on that's quiet? Well, we can look at what nature is doing. The plants are all dropping their leaves, stopping their growth, dying for the season, dropping their seeds into the soil where they'll sit dormant until spring, sending all the nutrients that they have down into their roots if the roots are going to stay alive. So the plants are going dormant. And what does that mean to us? Well, this is a good time to transplant plants if you want to. So we're looking at what nature's doing, and it's informing what we should do if we're taking care of ourselves. What else is nature doing? Well, the soil organisms like earthworms and nematodes and all kinds of things either die or become dormant, or they go down deeper into the soil. So a lot of what we're counting on the soil to do to break down organic matter and get more fertile and stuff like that, everything's going to go more slowly at this time of year. Except for one process. Plants grow roots at this time of year. So some of what's going on is they're settling themselves in. They're putting some more root hairs out. They're going down deeper. Many things, the seeds will sprout at this time of year, and they'll make their first few roots, and then that's all they do till spring. Like when an acorn sprouts. A lot of them sprout now, and they just grow a kind of a taproot, and they stick it in the ground, and once it's hard frozen, they don't do anything else. But I guess that gets a jump on what can they do when spring happens. So that's pretty cool. If you've been watching animals at this time of year, what are they doing? Well, things like squirrels and deer and bears, they are eating. They are finding food sources, locating them, and they're either storing it externally, like when squirrels are burying nuts, or they're storing it internally, like bears are eating those acorns and they're getting fatter. So what are they going to do? Well, if you're a squirrel, what you're going to do is you're going to sleep through only the worst weather, but you're going to be active all winter. And I've been learning some really cool things about squirrels. There's been a debate when squirrels, you know, they get nuts and they bury them, and you say, okay, they got those nuts stored. So are they remembering where they put 600 nuts? 1,000 nuts? Or are they just putting them in there and then they sniff them out fresh? I was watching a documentary about squirrels, and apparently they remember where they put them, which is absolutely blows me away. You know, to think, well, there's also evidence that a squirrel's brain grows and has more connections, more neuron connections in the cold months when it's time to store nuts and remember them and go get them. And then when spring comes and they're reproducing and they're just living, eating all the fresh food that there is, their brains shrink back to regular size. So that's pretty amazing. I mean, I can't remember where I put my keys, much less 1,000 important small objects that I buried. You know, they're pretty amazing, and they'll be active all winter long. So they'll be at my bird feeder eating my bird seeds. So what are the deer doing? They're fattening up. They're eating those same acorns. They're eating um, tasty, juicy buds and twigs. And they are also, at this time of year, mating. And depending on exactly where you are, how far south, how far north, what the conditions are like, um, that's a time when a lot of people are really paying close attention because it has to do with hunting season and how you would strategize going hunting. In other words, where will the deer be and how closely are they paying attention and where should you sit and where should you go in order to maybe get a deer. So, so paying attention to the natural cycles of things has been something we've done ever since the dawn of our species. You really need to pay attention. A long time ago, not even that long ago, in some parts of the world, we were the ones paying attention to the acorn harvest. We were the ones eating the acorns, or joining the army of other critters that were eating the acorns. Everything from little moths that lay their eggs in an acorn, and then you crack open an acorn, there's a little caterpillar in there. That's, there are beetles that do that. They're weevils. I could make a pun about the lesser of two weevils, but I'm not gonna. So you have tiny little critters eating the acorns. You have mice eating the acorns. Other larger insects eating the acorns. You have chipmunks, squirrels, groundhogs. Everybody's eating the acorns. It used to be the chestnuts. We've talked in episodes past about the loss of the American chestnuts. But nowadays, you go out in the woods, it's all about acorns and to a lesser extent hickories. So they are eating nuts to beat the band. Why is that? Why are they eating that and not other things? Well, that's where the fat, protein, and calories are right now. I mean, you could eat the last of the green things. There's something that we call a second spring. If you're foraging, if you're looking at wild plants and deciding when it's a good time to get the nourishing parts and to eat them. When the season changes, things go through the summer and they grow to full height and they flower and they make seeds and stuff like that. And a lot of times that's not a good time to eat the greens. They are going to have their highest mineral content and be much less digestible. Their starches are going to be in forms we can't break down. So we eat the part that is fresh and tender and digestible. But once fall comes around, plants get ready to kind of go into storage mode for the winter, and they grow tender leaves, and many kinds of plants grow what's called a winter rosette. They'll grow, think of dandelions. They grow their leaves out radially from the center, and they lay flat against the ground. If you do that, you're collecting solar radiation, so you're getting the most amount of heat from the sun. You're not sticking up in the wind, so you're not getting dried out. So plants that grow that format for the winter often have young, tender vegetation in the fall. So we can go and find it. It's often the tastiest, sweetest, least bitter. Many wild greens, people might, if they're not used to eating a variety of different flavors, they might not like them because they're bitter, but they're the least bitter when you get them in the fall, just before they either go dormant or put out their winter rosettes. So my nettle plants at home are just burst out in new tender growth, and I cut down all the stems, and they grew new ones in the fall. So if I wanted nettle, I'd be able to pick another crop of nettle. I picked a lot in the spring, and then I harvested the stalks to try to extract the fiber for making rope. Okay, cool. So what else is going on? The birds are either leaving or arriving as the fall goes on. So the birds that we saw throughout the summer, they migrated in order to nest and lay eggs and raise their babies, and by end of August they start leaving. So by the end of September, all the warblers are gone, the rose-breasted grosbeaks leave, the hummingbirds are all gone. Many kinds of birds, the ones that are here for the summer, are fair weather friends, you could say. They're gone. And then you have, for a while, what we could call the half-hardy birds. And these are birds that, if it doesn't get too nasty or too cold, they'll stay well into the winter. But if it gets really brutal, they'll push on and go further south. Things like catbirds and ruby-crowned kinglets and hermit thrushes and things like that. So they might be around all winter, or they might not. Depends on what the weather conditions. And then we have the birds that are truly here for the winter. And it's interesting, here in the mountains in North Carolina, we get two different batches of those. We get birds from very far north that fly away from where they live and they go far south. And we get birds that are living in those same sort of conditions, but they live on the tops of the highest mountains around here. So we could have the same species. Let's say juncos. They're a little bird, very much like a sparrow. They're dark gray with a kind of a light horn-colored beak. They eat seeds. Cute little birds. They've got 2 white stripes in the tail. If you're looking at a junco at your feet or in the winter, either it came from really far north or it came from just up the hill. Because once you get above 4,000 feet, they nest there. So we have a bunch of birds that are like that. Yellow-bellied sapsuckers. And who else is up there? Veeries and there's a lot of things. Some of those birds fly far away. The veeries don't stick around. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Rose-breasted red-bellied nuthatches. Red-breasted nuthatches. Yeah. So things are moving and things are changing. You might think, oh, the weather's cold. I don't really want to hang around outside, but definitely go outside and look around. It's busy. It's interesting. There's a lot of stuff to see. So what else is going on? We're having physically some reactions to this change in the weather. Everybody says, oh, look out, it's flu season. Well, why is it flu season? It's flu season because our immune systems are down. Why are our immune systems down? A number of herbalists that I've talked to, people that are really paying attention to our relationship between nature and health, things like that, they say that at this time of year, they do not want to be working hard. They want to be taking it easy, sleeping extra, paying attention to their dreams, socializing, reading books, and making things. They don't want to be outside digging ditches or keeping a heavy teaching schedule or working long hours, burning the midnight oil, whatever. It seems that if you push yourself during this season, you're just more likely to come down with something. I don't know if it's because our immune systems may be not working well, or it's just that at this time of year it's easy to overwork, and then we're adding the stress of you can be out and get cold. You can just, take a chill. Do you get the flu from taking a chill? No, you get the flu from the flu virus. But if you're not feeling well, healthy, strong, you might not fight off the flu and you'll get it. So, no, the cold didn't make you sick. The cold let you get sick because you couldn't fight it off. Does that make sense? That's my own brand of understanding what's going on at this time of year with your immune system. But it seems to pay out. It seems to play out that way. And it also feels really good and really appropriate to take time at this time of year and slow down and quiet down and stay inside and make things. So, what kinds of things am I making? Well, I'm whittling, I'm carving, and this lends itself to a lot of things. This object that I made here, one, it looks kind of like a little Christmas tree. It's a fuzz stick. I also make them because they are really, really helpful when you're trying to start your wood stove or your campfire. So, how do you make them? Well, I'll take a piece of wood and I'll split it into kind of square cross-section or triangular splinters, and then I'll just carve a shaving. And not cut it all the way off. 3 of these stacked against each other, you just put a match underneath it, and they'll produce loads of heat and help your fire get started. Or, might cut it off right there, put a piece of brass wire on here, and hang it on a Christmas tree. It's fun. I started doing that because I was teaching students how to make these for fire making purposes, and somebody said, "Hey, that looks like a Christmas tree." And I looked at it and I thought, yeah, I wonder how much like a Christmas tree I could make it. So I started to make them with tapered branches, little short ones at the top and longer ones as I went down, until they looked mighty like a Christmas tree. And so I put brass wire on them and sold them for Christmas ornaments at the farmer's market. Yeah, so this is something that is a useful craft that definitely suits the season. So I have to use my willpower to stop whittling on this thing because I have other things to show you. But once I get whittling, I'm good. I'm good for hours. That's the way it is with lots of my crafts. Okay, what else is going on with your body? Yeah, hibernate, dream, rest, think. Oh, changing what you eat. Now, most people in America today, they don't really live in the climate where their house is located. They live in their house and in their car, and in their work building, and in the store, and in the mall. They don't really have to contend with the environmental conditions. You know, if the only environmental conditions you have to contend with is when you run from your house to get in the car and turn the heat on as fast as you can, you haven't acclimated to anything. So if conditions outdoors are changing and you aren't changing with them, there's another stress that's going to affect your immune system. So I think we do much better and we feel better and we weather the season a lot better if you get used to the temperatures there are. Don't keep your house at 75 degrees. Keep your house at 65 degrees and wear a sweater. And, you know, put the warm quilts on when you go to sleep at night. And your body, trying to remember, a friend of mine who was an RN for many years was telling me that there was a study that there are proteins that your body puts online when you are acclimating to cold temperatures. And she just came back from Iceland, and she said that babies in Iceland are swaddled up, you know, in a giant fluffy snowsuit, and they stay outside for the first year of their life. They sleep outside, they stay outside, so the window's open and the people are, you know, watching the baby all the time, but the baby's breathing cold outside air. And you know, they're Icelandic, they're Vikings, they, you know, take pride in their durability. But they say that, you know, children that are raised that way, they almost never get sick. They grow up healthy and strong, and they don't complain of the cold, and they feel well, and all that stuff. So I think it's interesting. Yeah, so if you are getting used to the weather and you are feeling differences in your body based on being outside in the cold, doing your work outdoors, you'll find that you're craving fats, meat, and calories. If you're a vegetarian, you may be having a hard time at this time of year because a lot of vegetarians are really not getting enough just plain old, you know, burnable proteins and fats, that's your fuel. I mean, you may stock up your firewood for the wood stove for the winter. You have to stoke your own furnace. And I find that I want different things to eat at this time of year than at other times of year. At this time of year, I don't want a salad. I don't want raw cold vegetables. If I'm eating vegetables, they're cooked. I just want more heat. I want more moisture in my food through cooking it. I love soup at this time of year. I love you know, stewed vegetables with lots of broth, you know, whatever. And meat and fat. Put butter on everything. You know, That's what my body wants me to do. And I don't tend to get sick at this time of year anymore. When I used to keep a busy schedule at this time of year, then sometimes I did get sick. But nowadays I just don't seem to anymore. So I think it's interesting that if you're paying attention to what your body wants as the seasons change, those cycles are going to really correspond with what's going on in nature. They're going to be tracking the temperature cycles and the day length and what the animals are doing and what the plants are doing. So I'm paying attention to those things. All right. Well, what's going on in the primitive skills arena? What kinds of things are available at this time of year? It's all about paying attention to seasonality. I'm constantly keeping track of, oh, it's this time of year, this material is ready to harvest. Oh, it's that time of year, the fish will be coming up the streams. Oh, it's this time of year, time to lay low and sit in the water all day. So what's going on this time of year? Well, we were talking about animals, what they're doing. Many of them are fattening up. So if you eat animals, now would be the time to get them for multiple purposes. You might want the meat. You might want the fat. What's the fat good for? Well, animal fat rendered, in other words, cooked on a very low heat, maybe in like a double boiler situation where it's just keeping it warm. Melting that fat and removing all of the solids gives you a shelf-stable product that's very, very good for cooking, baking, any number of different things, and also medicinal qualities. Some light fats like bear fat is nearly liquid at room temperature. For it to get like a hard white fat like tallow, you have to get it down refrigeration temperature before it'll solidify hard. And that's also true for raccoon fat and groundhog fat and some of those other ones. And those fats are not strong flavored, and they are great for frying foods and cooking in, and they're very digestible and very good for you. They also make a great base for salves and other kinds of medicines where they're oil-based things. They're great, very valuable. Heck, you can even grease moving parts. You can use them for conditioning leather and other things like that. Keeping your cast iron pots from rusting. Any number of different things. Anything you need. You need grease, fat for. It's great. So, if you're not a hunter, how do you get bear fat? How do you get raccoon fat, groundhog fat? Well, you can either associate with hunters, or you can talk to people who do game processing. Because if somebody brings in a bear and they want the meat processed, they probably don't care what happens to the fat. And I have friends that make a good portion of their living working for butchers, doing the skinning, and that way the hunter gets the hide back carefully skinned, because if you're going to make leather, you're going to make a bearskin rug or whatever, the butcher doesn't really have time to be very careful with the knife. He just wants that skin off so he can process the food and he's done. So he's likely to hand it back to you full of little cut marks and holes. So if you want to hide, that's perfect. You probably want somebody doing it that, one, really knows what they're doing, and two, cares that that hide comes off perfectly. So you can talk to people that do that sort of thing. You have to track your game seasons, know when hunters are actually bringing animals in. That leads me to another thing. Anything with primitive skills and anything with homesteading and taking care of your health and just watching what nature is doing, it's all about preparing ahead of time for what's going to happen. So right now, people are starting to burn firewood, keep their houses warm. If they didn't have firewood and started looking for it now, all the firewood they would get would be terrible for burning. It'd be wet. It'd be either green or wet, and it would lose most of its heat drying itself out. So if you want firewood, you cut it 6 months or a year ahead of time, depending on how dense that wood is. So if you think you want to go to a game processor and get materials from him, talk to him in the summer and make a deal, make an arrangement, have an agreement that, oh yeah, when the time comes, you can come, you can, if anybody brings in a bear, I'll call you, you can come and skin the bear for the person, and you can take the fat. So this is what a lot of my friends do. They then render it out carefully, put it in jars, can it, seal it, and they sell it. And it's worth $20 a quart. And it's worth every penny. It's so useful. It's great. I prefer it for cooking over any other kind of grease. I'm a pretty big fan of butter, but I think the bear fat has more uses. Great. So what else with primitive skills? Some of the stuff that we might want to get, we don't want to gather it while the plants are alive and fresh. We want to wait until the plants have drawn all of their juices and much of their chemistry back into the roots. Some of the things that I need plants for are fibers. So these are stalks from a plant called dogbane, and I mentioned this plant. We talked about fibers before, but the reason why I brought it up today is because now is the time. The stalks have died for the year. The roots are alive, so we go and we can cut the dead stalks. The leaves have fallen off and they're dry. So we don't generally put dogbane in our mouths because when it's fresh, it's a fairly toxic plant. It has cardiac glycosides that act on the heart rhythm. It's definitely, you don't want a dogbane salad. That would be bad. So I don't want the wood, I just want the bark. So chipped it off, and here's the bark. Flexible, so I can just keep on processing this off the stalk. Crack the stalk, get rid of the pieces. This is good quality dogbane. Not really long, but it's very good. Partly that's because I got it just long enough after it's dead to let it not be stuck so hard to the stick, but not long enough for it to decompose in any way. It's pretty rot resistant. So anyway, here's my bark strip. If all I needed was lashing material, great, I could use this. This is so strong. I could not possibly break this with my hand. Now, that's not string exactly. So what would I do? I would process this. I kind of grind the fibers back and forth at a sharp angle, and the outer bark crackles and falls off. And what do I have? I end up with this really nice fiber, which I would then split into bundles and make string out of. So this is something that if you are a primitive skills practitioner and you're making your interesting nature craft projects, or you're surviving outdoors on your knowledge and your tools, this would be a very, very valuable thing to be doing at this time of year, is just processing fiber, because you're going to need it. I just finished making a net for a client that took a couple of 100 feet of string. So I was twisting fibers for a long time, a couple of weeks probably. And it's something that you would do all day in your downtime, just make string. Luckily, it's something you can do while you're walking, while you're talking to your friends, while you're waiting for dinner to get ready, anything like that. So it's one of those things where I like to say, when I'm teaching survival classes, I like to say there aren't enough hours in the day to do things one at a time. So if I'm going to be walking and carrying my water containers because I'm going to fill up my water container, and it's going to take me 15 minutes to go where I need to go. I'll make string the whole time while I'm walking. And I'll be talking to my friend. And I'll be noticing if the mushrooms are ready and all that stuff. So, all right. What other kinds of primitive skills? Oh, I didn't finish talking about animals. Not only do we care about, getting meat at this time of year and getting the fat at this time of year, and by the way, the fat is in with the meat, so you're not only pulling the fat off to use it separately, you're eating it with the meat. The fur at this time of year is different. So if you were, you caught a raccoon, what are you going to do with it? Well, first of all, I did catch a raccoon recently. I ate the meat, I rendered out some of the fat, and I have the hide, and I'm going to process the hide. I'm going to stretch it, scrape off all of the kind of external, the gushy stuff on the inside, and then I'm going to process it with the brains of an animal. I'll probably go to a butcher and get some calf brains or something like that, and then just kind of with a very clean hide with a little bit of brains and water rubbed in, I will stretch it over like a shovel blade or some kind of sharp corner, and just move all the fibers in the hides by pulling in all different directions until it is dry and worked in all directions and soft, and that's it. I've tanned the hide. I've brain tanned the hide. It's tricky. It's tricky to do with the fur on, to get it so it not only is properly scraped and really clean, but also broken so that it's flexible enough when you're all done, because you could get it where it's kind of cured, but it's stiff as cardboard, which it won't make clothing like that. Like I wouldn't want to wear raccoon skin underwear that was stiff as cardboard. I would want my underwear supple. Yeah, so that kind of thing. And the skins of animals change throughout the seasons. So when an animal is going through the fall, by the time it's mid-November, that animal's skin is thicker and tougher and better quality. If you are a fur trapper and you're thinking of selling some of the furs, you will get more money for them if they are kind of seasonally mature. We call it prime. And actually the kind of undercolor of the skin changes. When it is not prime, it's likely to be kind of got bluish gray patches. And the closer it is to being full prime in the winter, the more the skin is all white all the way through, which means it's actually thicker and stronger, so people that are buying leather and fur will pay more for it. So, not a lot of fur trapping going on, people catching furs just to sell them, because the prices are way, way down and we're just wearing furs out of fashion, and for good reason. If you're wearing a fur coat and you didn't catch that animal yourself and nobody ate that animal, I don't think that's a sustainable practice. I don't think it's a respectful practice. So I don't do it. I mean, I caught a raccoon recently. It was a raccoon that's been killing my chickens one after another. So I have a hunting license. I took this raccoon. I ate the raccoon, and I'm going to use the pelt as well. So I think all in all, that is something that we could continue to do over time, and I treated that raccoon with as much respect as I could muster for somebody that kept killing my nice chickens. But what can you do? All right, let's talk about what we're thinking if you have a homestead at this time of year. And this is all about, well, many homesteaders have been working their butts off all through the summer and the fall. They've been weeding, they've been harvesting, they've been putting up food, they've been keeping their equipment running, they've been selling, if they do any sort of market. So a lot of that's done. So what are you doing now? Well, you're doing the last harvests of the things that don't mind cold weather. I brought a couple of examples. One is, this is the last chance for me to be eating my sweet potatoes. This particular sweet potato needs to be cooked today because it was out in the weather last night and it was 16 degrees. So this sweet potato froze hard, and when it thaws out, it'll be wonderful for cooking, but it will then spoil after that. So somebody has to cook this sweet potato pretty soon. I was just having a conversation with Avram about sweet potatoes, and just saying that if you leave them in the ground and you don't dig them up, if you have real cold spells, as soon as the vine is dead, any tissue that's sticking out above the ground starts to rot and turn mushy, and that will just creep down into the tubers and ruin them. So you might get lucky, the weather might be okay, the stuff might be mulched well, and you might get them after, weeks or months. But you should have harvested your sweet potatoes right about the time of first frost, if you can. And as soon as you get the first nip and the leaves start to get damaged, there you go, dig them up. And what should you do with them? If you just dig up your sweet potatoes and say, "Yay, I have a bucket of sweet potatoes," well, you won't for very long, because they'll spoil in the bucket. What you have to do is cure them. In other words, they will last a lot longer if you put them someplace hot and dry for a while, and you let the skin kind of seal, and the skin hardens and seals the little cuts or the snapped off stems, and then this thing will store at cool, comfortable temperatures for months. So this particular sweet potato, well, time's running out for the sweet potato, but some of the other ones that I had, I put them in my little passive solar building where the sun could hit them and warm them up. It seems to have been enough. They seem still good. But when I came back from my trip and I started my wood stove up, I put a bunch more that I dug up into the rack at 8 feet above the ground, not far from the stovepipe. So they got nice and warm, lots of warm air circulating, and they will keep a long time like that. So sweet potatoes, this is a little late for sweet potatoes. You could leave your potatoes, your white potatoes, in the ground and just dig them up when you need them. In some places that doesn't work well because they get a hard frost that lasts for 3 months. So if you cannot dig because your ground is frozen hard down to feet, that's not really a viable alternative to leave them in the ground. But around here, our soils freeze and thaw all winter long, so I don't have any qualms about digging up potatoes throughout the winter. We even have plants that are tender greens that will withstand really cold temperatures, and then if it goes back above freezing, no harm, no foul. This is a plant called tatsoi. It's also called a mustard spinach. It's a tender, sweet Asian green in the mustard family, and it grows what are called basal rosettes, and this is how the plant can last through the winter so well. And I've seen these things take below 20 degrees and then come back. I went out with frost blankets and I covered most of mine. This one I did not cover, and it looks a little soft, but I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be delicious, and they're delicious raw. They're delicious steamed, sautéed in soups. It's a yummy plant, and I love the way they look. It's this beautiful, glossy, dark green. Oh my gosh! Something I forgot to mention. When a plant stays green throughout the cold season, one of the ways that they can survive is by introducing as much sugar as possible into the tissues. It acts like antifreeze. That's why if you have cold crops, things in the mustard family like collards, mustards, kale, things like that, if you wait until after frost to harvest them, they're a lot sweeter. This leaf that I ate was just delicious. Let me eat another one. Candy. That's so good. So what could you do? I mean, we had 16 degrees last night. That is colder than even this plant can take. So, what do you do about that? You could build a hoop house. You could do little low hoops and just do like row covers. Because a lot of times what kills the plants is not just the temperature, it's the frost settling on it and just the circulation of cold air on it. So if you can protect it from kind of air changes and trap air around it, somehow they can stand colder temperatures. So cold frames are very handy and then not too expensive to put together. That's just, could be anything from an inverted fish tank. You just put the fish tank over your plant. It could be, people use in conservatories, they use like bell jars, glass jars over valuable plants. There's loads of things you can do. Just try not to let it get that cold, and they may last. Okay, so what about after you've harvested everything? What are you going to do with the garden bed? Well, if all you do is just leave it, a couple of things are going to happen. One is you may have all of the seeds from the weeds from this year. You got a choice. You can either pull all of the weeds out, roots and all, and take them away, or you can just cut them off and leave the roots in. Why would you want to pull them out if you're then going to want to soften up the soil and you don't want anything else in there, and you're going to then compost everything and you're going to use it? If you're going to leave the roots in, what will happen is those roots will start to decompose, and they provide channels for water and earthworms and nematodes to be able to work their way up and down in the soil, so you get better transfer of nutrients in the soil if you let the roots rot where they are. So, that's good advice. All right, I have, as all sensible organic gardeners should, a horror of bare soil. If I see a field where they're all done with it and they've harvested and they just kind of turn it over and you just leave the naked dirt sticking out, that just horrifies me. Because that's their nitrogen just leaving. Nitrogen, in its most common form in the earth, is N2, and it's airborne. So we want our nitrogen to be in fertilizers in the soil and stay there. But if they're exposed to the air and they get turned over, that nitrogen leaves. I want it in the soil because that's what my plants are asking for. So those unfortunate farmers that are turning over their soil, they think they're doing it in order to let the soil dry or this, that, or the other thing. But they're going to need to spend more money on fertilizer or do more work on fertilizer or not have a very good crop. So if I see any bare soil, my big thing to do, putting a garden bed to bed for the winter, is mulch. Mulch, 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 mulch. What constitutes mulch? It's any kind of material that keeps that bare soil from sticking out. It could be stuff that you want to decompose in, like one of my favorite mulches is just leaves. That's what's going on in the fall. Leaves are falling off trees. So these are just maple leaves. They fell from my big maple tree, and I will pull out my weeds, cut off my weed stalks, harvest out the last of my vegetables, do whatever I'm going to do, and then just put a bunch of manure or whatever kind of compost I have, and then I'll just put a whole batch of leaves over the top. Now, the wind is going to definitely take these leaves. So I might put just some screen over the top, or a frost blanket over the top, or whatever I've got. Anything just to keep the leaves from blowing off of my garden bed. They actually don't do too badly. These leaves have been in a bag for a few months, and they're almost like curled into each other and knitted with each other. This is one block that I just picked up out of the bag, and I said, Oh, that's holding together pretty nice. I just stuck it in here. So, yeah, leaves. They're free. They're lying on the ground. Now, in keeping with the idea that I don't want to see bare soil, if I had a lawn, I wouldn't want to rake leaves off my lawn either. I don't have a lawn. I have pasture. I don't have a lawn. Those leaves lying on your lawn are keeping your grass plants protected in the cold weather. They're keeping you. They're rotting in. They're adding their nutrients. They're keeping the worms and nematodes close to the surface where the grass roots are going to use them. You want to leave the leaves on your lawn. And if you do move the leaves around, just do it so you can make a big pile for the kids to play in, even big kids. A big pile of leaves could also save your life. A big enough pile of leaves has a lot of dead airspace in it. It's ideal insulation. So you can build a little bit of a frame and cover it over with 2 feet of leaves. Stuff the inside with leaves so that really it's like a squirrel's nest. The squirrel can just go in there and just disappear right in the middle, and you can't even see where the entrance was. So you just do that on the ground. If you use multiple feet of leaves from where you are, multiple feet out from there, it could keep you alive in below zero weather. So that's a heck of a claim to be able to make. That's something you made with your hands in about an hour could keep you alive in below zero weather. And that's assuming you're not dressed in many layers with the right hat on and everything like that. So leaves are our friends. They're very, very helpful. I like leaves when I'm camping to just take a spare garbage bag, fill it up with leaves, and there's a comfortable mattress to sleep on. It's great. All right, what else would I mulch with? 2 things that people often mistake for each other. One is straw. Now that's straw. What is straw? Straw is the stalks that they have left after they take the grain off the top. So this could be wheat straw, oat straw, rice straw, whatever kind of grain you have. When you knock the grain part off the head and mill it and do whatever you're going to do with it, you have all these stalks left over. So you can buy straw. It's available. It's actually not cheap unless you're in an area where they grow a lot of grain. We don't grow a lot of grain in North Carolina, so straw is actually more expensive than other kinds of baled products. But straw is really valuable because it's nearly inert. So there are a lot of things you can do with it where it's not going to rot, insects aren't going to eat it, animals aren't going to eat it. So why do people buy straw? They buy it for bedding. They buy it so that, a horse will lie down on it, or, if an animal's going to give birth, it'll give birth on the straw. So I like straw as a mulch because you put it on and it's really going to stay there throughout the winter, and it will break down. It also, because the top's been lopped off, it has no seeds in it. So I'm not going to accidentally introduce a lot of new seeds into my garden to become weeds. So straw is a great material. I use straw in natural building projects. There's a heck of a lot of straw in my kudzu house. My house is baled kudzu and grass hay, actually. But I've used straw in a lot of the building portions. If you think of straw as being a lot of strings, just think, if you mix a clay plaster and you had all these stringy objects that go in all different directions, you've got a material with tensile strength. So I've seen people build clay benches that stick out from the wall, and it's the length of the straw that makes the bench strong enough, and you can sit on it, and it's like it sticks out from the wall a foot. It's like a foot thick, and it sticks out from the wall a foot, and there's nothing holding it up. No feet on it, no legs on the bench. It's just the strength of the straw in the clay that keeps it strong. So straw's a really cool material. Heck, people used to stitch coil baskets out of straw, and they would keep their beehives in it. Straw, because it's long and narrow, you could make a bunch of it, and you could sew some cord around it, and then build a coil that continues up, and you build a bigger and bigger and bigger disc and a bigger coil, and that's your basket. So your basket is made of straw and string. You already know about string. You can get string. Cool. All right. So what's the alternative that people are confusing straw with? Hay. So this is hay. And this is actually a high quality hay that's designed for finicky horses. So this was expensive hay. This does not have a lot of seed heads in it, but it does have some. So if you were to use hay for mulch, put your garden to bed, put your fertilizer down, and then you sprinkle hay all over the top, you might have some hay plants. What are hay plants? Grass. You might have grass pop up in your garden beds. But if you keep it real thick, well, that's the other thing. How thick a layer of mulch do you want? Easily 6 inches. We have one problem here in the mountains with mulch, and that is it rains plenty around here. I mean, we can have dry spells, and it's humid. It can be. And because it's humid and it rains plenty, a big pile of mulch can be a slug farm. So whatever it is you're trying to grow in your garden, you might actually pull the mulch away if you're having slug problems. Let the soil be dry in between waterings. So the mulch keeps you from having to water so often. It keeps weeds from springing up in between, and it adds soil fertility, but it might have some problems with slugs. Anyway, so this is the hay. It even smells good. It smells really sweet. So I lucked into a quantity of hay. I just bought it for mulch, and if you're lucky, you can find spoiled hay. Like for some reason, it was last year's hay, or the barn roof had a leak. Whatever reason, people are trying to get rid of it cheap, because you're just going to lay it in your garden so it'll rot. If it's already rotting, fine, who cares? So if you can get spoiled hay for cheaper, do it. Otherwise, hay is over $5 a bale, frequently. So a bale of hay goes a long way. So anyway, that's what I'm thinking about this time of year. What do I need to do for my body? What do I need? What is nature doing to give me inspiration for good ideas? What is nature providing as far as resources? Is it giving me fiber? Is it giving me food? Is it giving me pieces of wood the right size and shape that I can now find now that the leaves are off? Are mushrooms sprouting at this time of year? Oyster mushrooms might be. So that's what I'm paying attention to. And hopefully while I'm busy paying attention to that, I'm also getting plenty of sleep. And I'm drinking hot liquids and having soup for dinner and taking time to drain. So I think that's where we'll end it today. So this has been Earth Skills with Jeff Gottlieb. And I have a couple of pieces of news. I have finally got a website launched. So you can see it at theprimitivenaturalist.com. And it also has a Facebook page, so find me on Facebook at theprimitivenaturalist.com. And you will find links to these shows. You will find blog posts coming up soon. I'm going to be doing one on harvesting and collecting dog bane. And keep in touch. Send me comments, send me questions, send me requests for show topics, and we'll see what we can do with them. And enjoy the fall and take it easy.